Steven here, your DS for 3 Stepsisters. Stage 5 has a length of 38.1 kilometers and 586 meters of climbing. Power-ups are a little different for Stage 5. We'll have a feather given in the pens, hopefully to be used on the KOM Bypass, and another at the arches before the grade to be used there. Bike choice, avoid the disc wheel. Lighter setups are better for the draftable climbs. We start at the pens of Watopia Pier. Usually this is not an all-out start, especially considering how long the course is, but with the road gradually ramping up to 2.3% for roughly a half mile, there is risk of the group stretching. Sit in the front third and react to moves rather than forcing the pace. The goal here is to stay calm and conserve energy. Early splits here are very rarely decisive. There'll be a short downhill and flat section as you approach the volcano. This is likely where riders at the front will ease, satellite groups caught, and minor splits off the back work to reconnect. Races will have only been active for a few minutes, so maintain your composure and do not panic to a rider or two off the front. If racers want to chase, let them burn their legs. You don't have to. Working your way through the volcano, there's a brief 5% punch inside. Some racers will take this too hard. Don't burn a match, let group momentum carry you over. There's 2 descents immediately after that will pull the groups back together. After these brief descents, we'll take a right into Jarvis Island. This is a 3-mile loop that houses the Jarvis KOM Reverse. The climb itself has 2 major parts, totaling 41 meters of climbing for 1.3k. At 5 watts per kilogram, you're looking at roughly a 2-minute effort. Things start easy as you cross the bridge, easing into gradients under 3%. The next right-hander brings nasty gradients over 8%. If you position in the front for this section, you may ease back into the group when things level out. As the group presses on, you can then rejoin their draft. Tail gunning is risky. Gradients hit over 10% as you approach the banner. Push hard to stay with the group. Being dropped here will nearly end your race. If you absolutely need to use a feather, do so. Just know it's less than ideal with harder and longer climbs down the road. As you crest, you'll ride across 2 more bridges that are downhill with increased rolling resistance. There's a small false flat on the second bridge which will help the groups to converge. Focus on holding wheels. If you're gapped, there's a chance for you to make it on if you push hard. Just know, burning matches will hurt down the line. The next major effort will be on the dirty Sorpresa and Italian Villa climbs. This effort is 1.2 miles away, offering around 2 minutes to recover. The pace will begin to climb as the road transitions to gravel, rolling resistance increased. Enter the dirty Sopressa climb mid-pack and use group momentum. All of these switchbacks are draftable 2 to 3% gradients. Avoid burning matches. The second portion of this climb is a great place to make up positions if you need to. A keen eye will notice the negative 1% gradients just before the 4% punch. A burst of power on the negative gradients will build your momentum and help you move through these steeper portions. This is also not the spot to chase flyers. After the Italian villas, we have 1.5 miles of negative gradients. This will hopefully net roughly 3 minutes of recovery. Most importantly, this is the final bit of recovery before the epic KOM Reverse bypass. Use this section to lower your heart rate, fuel, and especially prepare mentally. There is a risk of the pace increasing once you hit the gravel of the fishing villas. The group could stretch, as riders who fear getting dropped on the climb take position near the front. What many don't realize is that leading to the KOM line, there's a wooden bridge that connects on a false flat of 2%. This bridge is a sign for you to focus. The next descent is over 3 miles away. Let's break these 3 miles into 2 sections. 1 is the winding epic KOM Reverse, and 2 is the bypass. Section 1 is 1 mile long and will take roughly 3 minutes with an average power output of 5.5 watts per kilogram. The steepest section of this climb is right at the start. Hit it with momentum from the rear of the group. This will position you extremely well for the first switchback. It maxes out at 10%, and from this point on, the climb only gets easier. Having the luxury of being positioned well is also key because it gives you flexibility. If you have to briefly come off the pedals, doing so won't result with you having to chase back to the front. Another benefit is being able to draft this brief 3% section before the second switchback, which hits over 12%. Your goal is to be with the front group by the time it levels out to 8%. If you want a strong finish, you must still be with the leaders here. If you need to use a feather in this section, do so. Section 2 is the bypass itself. This begins just after the bridge, and that's 1.6 miles of roads. They're draftable, but the group will continue to push on what is ultimately a long falls flat. This painful effort will be roughly 4 minutes if you're averaging 4.4 watts per kilogram. Riders on their limit can maintain their position in the group with far less risk of being dropped. Focus on defending your position, holding wheels, and avoid chasing unnecessary attacks. Flyers off the front tend to get reeled in here or on the descent just after on the bridge. As you approach that bridge, don't ease too quickly. Give an extra few pushes until you're safely on the -7% gradients. The descent itself is somewhat effective for a power tuck, especially after the bridge on the switchbacks, but it's not something that should be used unless you're chasing a group. Riding solo off the front is pointless with over 10 miles until the start of the grade. Within this 10-mile section, your greatest risk of being dropped is just around the corner. There's a short climb as you make your way towards Titan's Grove. It's a 3/4 mile effort that you must ride defensively. The group momentum will help you through the wooden bridge where rolling resistance is increased. The time taken through this section will be roughly 1:30 if you're averaging 4.3 watts per kilogram. Moving through these sections, it's quite easy for things to be strung out. The longer you're on this climb, the steeper it gets. The draft alone won't save you as you make your way through the switchbacks and you hit close to 3% gradients. This is where the pack tends to pull away from solo riders. Watch for moves, stay focused, and once you crest, you'll be rewarded with descending roads for the next 1.2 miles or 3 minutes. Pack advantage will be huge. -4% gradients will slowly lead you to the coast as you pass a roundabout and move towards the ocean. Stick with the group, and if there are flyers, let them burn their legs. They'll have a very difficult time keeping the pack away on this extremely flat section. Your recovery window will slowly come to an end as you pass Mr. Crink's Crab Shack on your right. Expect the group to begin stretching as 2 long easy rollers are ridden, especially if any flyers remain out front. Approaching a campsite will also signal a couple 3 to 4% climbs that are split with a descent that will allow for another brief recovery. When dropping down to the woodland sprint reverse, focus on resting your legs. Paces tend to increase on segments, and this looks like a gravel segment, but with no dust kicking up, we can treat this like tarmac. There is a slight climb that kicks up over 4% near the end of this segment. Expect the pace to remain high as you pass over it, and riders may even try an attack to break the group. The risk of this is low, being that the course is flat just ahead. Making our way towards a fishing village that houses the Sasquatch Sprint Reverse, a steep downhill will offer you one final opportunity to truly come off the pedals. Maintain your position in the mid to the rear of the pack, drafting safely. Attacks may come on or just before the third bridge as you approach the sprint segment. A good tactic is to slightly push on the downhill to use momentum to carry you on the uphill. This will help you save your legs, and if there is a move, you can follow it more easily from the front of the pack. After all, the grade is only 2 miles away. Anything you can do for marginal drafting benefits, the better. In these last 5 minutes before the grade, a couple of 3% undulations will sting before entering a tunnel and the Itza portion of Watopia. Continue to draft as much as possible. Most riders will lower the pace and prepare for the climb. The grade itself is 3.5 kilometers, 305 meters of elevation, at an average of 8.6%. The estimated time is 15 minutes for most riders. 3 watts per kilogram, 18 minutes, 5 watts, just under 12. Use the draft to build speed and establish yourself in the front of the group. If you're lucky, you can immediately set a pace that you're comfortable with. Pure climbers will likely immediately move to the front though and set a hard pace. The grade is broken up into 2 sections, with a draftable portion in the middle. The first half starts steadily, but continues to get steeper. Logic will tell you to avoid starting too fast in this first section. You're looking at a 4 to 8 minute effort. In a race, I like to ride free of strict power limitations for pacing. This high risk, high reward mindset lets you stay with the front group as long as possible. The reason is, waiting and pacing often means you'll never see them again. You'll want to hold on as long as possible without jumping over the edge to blowing up. It's a painful but effective strategy that usually nets better results than saving yourself for the final few switchbacks. This strategy is also effective because you never know how your legs will feel entering these climbs after what has already been on nearly 20 miles of racing. Drafting this first steep section is more effective than the second. Settle in to the uncomfortable pace and focus on the riders ahead of you. Very few riders will make punchy moves to create gaps in this early section. They'll either slowly pull away or you'll slowly pull them back. Keeping the gap within 1 to 2 sections here is also ideal because when you get to the blue section, to enjoy the draft, you can stick in their wheel. This will save you precious time on the riders behind that don't have that luxury. I give a little punch just before the flat and the 2-second gap that was there is gone. Even more importantly, if I would have started this climb pacing for a 10+ minute effort, I would have never given myself the opportunity to crest this with the front riders. In this middle flat section, be conscious that you'll break your rhythm. The steepest sections of our climb are still ahead. We're looking at 8 switchbacks, over a mile of climbing on steep 10% roads. Time-wise, 7 minutes of averaging nearly 4.5 watts per kilogram. This is when pure climbers will really turn the screws and when it's extremely important to avoid blowing up. A perfect example of this is on screen. Instead of following this punchy effort, I maintain my rhythm. I can feel I'm right on the edge of my threshold. When you're at that point, you continue to look over the edge but never step into it. Entering through each switchback, you'll push gradients of nearly 12%. If you need to, dial back your power just a bit as I do here. You may be putting out less power than some of the riders behind you, but by putting in that effort early, you've established yourself ahead of many riders and you haven't blown up. If you still have a feather, these last 2 flashing sections are exactly where you want to use it. The first flashing section signals that you're on the last switchback and where you want to truly start pushing. The second flashing section hits 13%, an ideal spot to launch a final bomb to catch riders. A flat section exists just before the banner. Do not stop pushing early. Your goal is to cross the line completely empty.